Monday, it's my only day off of the week. I'm probably still gonna go play some poker later in the afternoon, but this morning it's such a beautiful day, it's not too hot. So I decided to go and take myself out to brunch. I saw this place that Gareth Eats, who's a YouTube vlogger that vlogs a lot about Vegas and the food. So yeah, I'm gonna go check it out. I think it's called Tonton Katsu. It's quite far for me, but it looked like it was worth the drive. I'm not sure if they're gonna serve solo diners, so we'll have to see. There's usually a long wait, so it's pretty popular, so I'll see if I can get in. Afterwards, it seemed like only Bellagio had 5-10 games running, so I went over there. I still needed to get approval to film in there, so you'll just have to make do with a quick shot of me driving into the valet, walking into the poker room, and trying to take a picture of my 1.9k profit. Yes, we are all about quality here at this vlog. For the first part of the week, I did a lot of study in the evenings. I usually study in two ways. The first is I have a bunch of sessions from online that I import into GTO Wizard. I go into the sessions and sort the hands by those that have the highest EV loss and start at the top of the list. So for each hand, I look into which street the mistake was made, and I delve into why what I did was suboptimal and the impact on later streets. I don't study the parts of the hand prior to the mistake because when I did that, I found I was going into rabbit holes on ranges and certain combos, and I'm just not at the level where that kind of specificity is the best return on my time. So I focus on the mistakes instead of the other parts of the hand where I already largely played correctly. It usually takes me about 45 minutes per spot, so I basically have a pretty big backlog of online hands that expose a lot of my leaks. This is probably not the most efficient way and probably doesn't work for everyone, but I found it to be pretty effective in getting me to think deeper about hands. The second way I study is by watching videos. I usually watch Iri Pelig's Gorilla Poker videos. Even though a lot of the hands shown are at high stakes online, he does such a good job at explaining the strategy so that it's relevant for those that play at my stakes as well. I find that taking notes during the video really makes me focus rather than feeling like I'm just letting the commentary wash over me. So, I haven't played poker in a few days. Feel a little rusty, so I'm gonna give myself a pep talk before going in. I'll spare you the actual pep talk, but I'm just trying to get myself in the right mental state. Yeah, work has just been a little bit busy in the last few days. I also had surgery on Monday, so I was recovering and then had extra work to do on Tuesday. So yeah, I've taken a little bit of a break from poker, but we're here, we're at the win. We're gonna go crush some 5-10, like absolutely wreck someone today. That is my goal, to wreck someone's life. That would be ideal. Apart from that, just play solid, don't punt. Actually, I'm allowing myself one punt, because if I don't allow myself any punt, I'm gonna punt so hard. So one punt for the session, and hopefully the punt works out. But yeah, good talk. In this hand, we have ace jack off under the gun and we're playing 6-handed. We open to 30 and low jack and small blind both call. Flop is queen 9-7 rainbow. We don't really have much except some backdoor straight possibilities. Still, we c-bet 40 and both call. Turn is the 5 of hearts and shouldn't really help anyone that much. I thought with the jack of hearts, it blocks some flush draws that people would call a small flop bet with, and continue turn, so I fire again for 140 and it gets through. A few hands later, we have King, Queen of Spades. There are a couple of limpers, so we make it 50 on the hijack, button calls, and the limpers fold. The flop is Ace, 8, Deuce, 2 spades, so we have the nut flush draw and generally a good board for our hand. We c-bet 50. I feel like in these spots, the gamble in me kind of wants a call and a chance to hit a flush, but I guess we should really just be happy with our opponent folding. Anyway, the turn is why a fold maybe wouldn't have been so bad. A repeat 8 favors his range a bit more, but in any case, we decide to fire again for 200 this time, and he calls again. Now we're just praying to the heavens for a spade. Unfortunately, we get the 7 of clubs, and now we have to decide what we're going to do. Generally, this is a pretty bad bluffing hand, I think, holding spades, but I suppose we block some ace queen, king 8, and queen 8 of spades, which could call from the button. Also not convinced our opponent wants to stick the rest of his stack in with an ace with a low kicker, so we put him all in for his remaining 800. He tanks for quite some time, then finally folds, and we can breathe again. In this hand, we have pocket 8s in the low jack. We raise it to 40 over a limp. Small blind 3 bets to 200, and the limper folds, and we call. It felt like small blind was one of those racks that raise infrequently, so probably has a tight range, but also felt like one of those guys you could stack if you flop a set versus their high pocket pairs. So we call, and we see a flop of jack 6-5, 2 hearts. He bets 200, and we get a little stubborn here. I think pocket 8s with a heart is a call, but without the heart, it's probably a fold considering his tighter range. Turn is a 3 of clubs, and he quickly checks, which now makes his high pairs pretty unlikely, and we see a bit of hope of getting to showdown with pocket 8s, so we check behind. I suppose we could bet here, trying to fold out maybe 9s and 10s and deny equity from ace king and ace queen, so I'm gonna just quickly check this. So we had to make some reductions to small blind's range because I don't think he's 3-betting a lot of lower pocket pairs, suited connectors, and suited aces, so I mean, it's really anyone's guess, but this seems like a reasonable range. So when he c-bets for half pot on the flop, I was right in saying that pocket 8s with a heart is a call, and without, it's definitely a fold, losing quite a bit if you call. So then we can't really sim the rest of the hand, but let's just assume we have pocket 8s with a heart. If we had that, we can decide between 3 ways of playing it on the turn. We can check to try and realize our equity. We can bet pretty big as a bluff to fold out 10s and jacks, or we can bet a quarter pot to protect our equity versus hands like ace king, ace queen, king queen, etc. Thought that was kind of cool. Anyway, that's if you had the 8 of hearts. In this hand, we decide to check behind. On the river, we see a very bad card. It's a king. He checks, and although we don't beat very much, I decided to check behind, and thank God we did because he had ace king. Now, this was a pretty interesting hand against a reg. We have ace deuce of clubs under the gun. We raise and only big blind calls. The flop is ace ace 6 rainbow. He checks, I bet 20, and he raises me to 60. Obviously not going anywhere, so we call in position. Turn is the king of diamonds. He checks. Definitely felt like weakness at this point, so I don't think I'm getting called by much worse if I bet here. So we decide to check behind. River is the 5 of diamonds, completing a backdoor flush, which doesn't feel that relevant here in the way the hand was played. He bets 100, and we have a very easy call here. He shows us 7-6 offsuit. So he decided to raise the flop, which I think makes a lot of sense to kind of protect your hand. And yeah, I think the rest of the hand was pretty reasonable by him as well. In this hand, we are blind versus blind, 3k deep. I open King Jack of Hearts in the small blind and big blind calls. The flop is Queen Queen 8, 2 diamonds. I wasn't sure what to do here, so I checked. It seemed like an okay thing to do when I don't know if I'm betting for value, as a bluff or protection. Big blind checks behind. The turn is another queen. Now we put out a bet of 30 and we get a call. We are definitely in bluff mode here, while recognizing it might take multiple barrels to fold out small pairs and ace highs. The river is a 9, and we continue with our plan and bet $100. Big blind thinks for a while, then throws in a call. We turn over a very sad King Jack, and he turns over King 10. So we're both sitting there thinking it's a chop for a second, and then I realized I actually win. So big blind is our friend Tom, and I think he just really wanted to get on the vlog, so was willing to donate $100 to make sure he had a memorable hand. Although his call really made me think that King Jack had decent showdown value and probably wasn't a good bluff candidate in the first place. So in this hand, we are playing short. I pick up 7-6 of spades in hijack and open it up to 30. Big blind makes it 140 and I call. The flop is 10-9 deuce, 2 diamonds. He bets 140 and we decide that we are going to float. The turn is another 9, and although it's not a good card for our hand, it's not a bad card for our range versus our opponents. So when he fires 360, we decide to go for a raise of 1200, putting our opponent and honestly ourselves in a very uncomfortable position. The thinking here was pretty much that I have a lot more 9s than he does, and I guess I would do this with 9s, so we went for it. He tanks for what seems like forever, and then finally lays it down, and we get this one through, thank God. In this next hand, we have Jack 7 of spades on the button. There are 3 limpers ahead of us, so we raise it up to 50, and all 3 call. The flop is Ace 9 8 with 2 hearts. Everyone checks to me, and I check behind. The turn is a miracle offsuit 10, giving us the second nuts. There's a bet of 110, then there's a call, and we are definitely raising this up, so we make it 440. To our surprise, we get both to call. Now we just gotta hope that the river is not a... never mind. Both players consider the river and decide to check to me. I gotta think that someone has the flush, so I decide to check it back. One player shows 2 pair, the other mucks, and we take it down with our straight. So these last 2 hands I don't actually have footage of because I was on 1020 and you can't film on 1020, so I can just describe the hands to you with some graphics. In this hand we pick up aces under the gun. We raise it to 60 and under the gun 1 calls as well as the button. So there was this moment where under the gun 1 touches his black chips and looked like he was about to 3-bet, but then opted for a call instead, which kind of made me think that he had a high pair like 10s through kings. The flop is 7-6-3 rainbow. I bet 80. Under the gun 1 raises to 240 and the button folds and I call. The turn is the 6 of clubs, bringing in a club draw. I check, he bets 450 and I raise it to 1150 thinking I can still get value from kings through 10s. He decides to call. The river is an offsuit 4 and I bet 1400. He thinks for quite a long time and then finally calls. My aces are good and he later tells me that he did in fact have 10s. And then in the very last hand of the session, we pick up jacks in the small blind. Cutoff opens for 60, I 3-bet to 280, and he calls. The flop is king 4-3 rainbow. I c-bet 200 and he calls. The turn is a 9 of clubs. I check and he quickly checks behind. The river is a deuce of clubs, so I initially didn't see that the backdoor flush came in. So I bet 400 for some very thin value. He thinks for quite a while and then ends up raising to 1900. Long story short, I end up calling and it's very, very bad as we are up against the nut flush. So yeah, that's a really good end to the session. The last hand of the session, because I was leaving, I was starving, I need to go help take care of my friend's cat. And I pick up jacks in the small blind, and let's just say I made a really bad call. Awful. Like, I played that so bad. I'm lost for words. I don't know, I think for some reason it's just one of those spots where you're just like, this guy is bluffing, and my gut was like, he's bluffing, and he wasn't, so. So to wrap up the week, here are my results across the few short sessions that I played. Hope they distract you from my suddenly terrible chopstick skills.